Frosmoth is below never used competitively, and that's largely in part to it having one of the worst possible typings with Ice Bug. Its stats are not extremely impressive either, other than solid base 125 special attack, but it does have a unique ability in Ice Scales, which gives it a 50% buff to special defense. Its saving grace is of course Quiver Dance, allowing it to boost up special attack, special defense, and speed by 1 stage. With some setup help, this bad boy actually goes kinda crazy with Stab Ice Beams, along with coverage in Giga Drain or even sneaky Ground Terror Blast. Ground Terror is also nice for allowing it to live dreaded rock moves, not to mention it got a buff in this gen by Snow giving it a 50% boost to physical defense. Frosmoth is definitely a forgotten fella, but it can be better than people think, and today we're gonna make it go crazy. Look, the glaring problem with Frosmoth that I haven't mentioned yet is that you unfortunately have to evolve a Snom to get it, and Snom is perfect, so you hate to do it. But today we're showing some love to the Moth Boy. This thing is actually really fun, and it's actually way better, I feel like, than people give it credit for. If you're into this kind of thing, you should consider hitting that subscribe button. I've got a whole bunch of Pokemon shenanigans coming up, and you don't want to miss them. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the match. Alright, so my opponent's going to go ahead and lead off with the most fire Magikarp merch you've ever seen that you can find at Haydunn.com. Just kidding, they're actually going to end up going with a Golurk, which, you know, they should have gone with the Magikarp merch. You should click that link in the description, really does help out the channel. But regardless, I've got myself a Clodsire. Now, here's the thing, I'm thinking that this big ol' iron bastard's going to go for a Stealth Rock, and they do not. They actually go for an Earthquake, and then I'm down a Clod early. I just straight up just get Earthquaked, and I was like, yeah, you know, I probably should have seen that coming. So we're now going to be having to deal without Stealth Rock, and well, that's mostly fine. Whatever. I'm going to end up switching into the Croissant Ears, and I figure, you know what, I'm going to set up a Psychic Surge. Now on this team, this thing has a couple different roles, but for the most part, it's here to set up Psychic Terrain to be able to enable things like Reuniclus, Stops Priority, and overall, it's just a fun guy to have around. So I can also now go for pretty hard-hitting Expanding Forces. Boosted by that Psychic Terrain, it's going to do some decent damage. But instead, they actually end up swapping into friggin' Metagross, who this big-ass Xbox 360 does not take any damage. But here's the thing. Now, I know that I'm faster, so I can't Encore yet. I decided to stay in and go for another Expanding Force just for, you know, minimal chip. But for the most part, to see if they want to go for Stealth Rock, which they do, I can now be able to outspeed and Encore them into that, which is going to open the door for some different opportunities to try to set something up. So they do go for Stealth Rock, which is great. I'm going to like, hey, you know what? That was actually so nice. Go ahead and do that again for me. I Encore them into it, so now they are stuck, and that is great because now this forces essentially a switch, and it gives me a little bit of momentum in terms of being able to bring in whatever I want. So I figure while this Psychic Terrain is up, I might as well try to take advantage of it. I have Terrain Extender on the Indeedee, so it's going to stick around, and I figure Reuniclus isn't a bad option here to try to set up Calm Minds and then be able to hit stuff real hard with Expanding Forces. So they of course switched, realizing, you know, they can, no reason to stay in and go for another Stealth Rock, and they're going to end up going into the Galarian Slowking. So I figure this is a fine matchup for me. I know that I can take special attacks while I Calm Mind all day, but it turns out they're going to go for the Chilly Reception. Hilarious part is that actually goes first, meaning Slowking is in fact faster, which is just funny. But they go for that Chilly Reception, gonna set up some snow, but also now it allows them a swap. They're gonna go right back into the damn Xbox because they realize, hey, if it works against one Psychic fella, it's probably gonna work against this thing. But as I now set up a Calm Mind, I'm feeling like, you know, I can take attacks from this thing, and also I've got myself a good old-fashioned ball made of shadow ready to bop this thing right in his X nose. So that is the plan. I'm going to click the shadow ball. Bad thing is, of course, this Xbox is going to be able to go first. And it turns out extra bad because they go for a freaking explosion, which is actually not super ideal. Now, it's also hilarious. They go for the explosion, and then I'm like, wait, what the hell? It actually has a normal gem to boost its damage. So it kills itself, and with that normal gem, it's going to be able to knock me out. I always think it's hilarious. They explode and then use the item. He like fully is in pieces, and he's like, hold on. I have a normal gem. So yeah, that's going to take care of the Reuniclus, and that puts me in a relatively bad spot. Now, I obviously not going to be able to do anything with the little jelly. So I realized on an empty switch, I decide I'm going to go right into the Volcanion here. I figure I should be able to take an attack from stuff, and I do pressure a lot offensively. So bad thing is, on the empty switch, they decide to bring in Thundurus, which is not ideal for my donut ass. But as they go for the crazy Wild Bolt Storm, it actually doesn't kill me, but it does get the para, but I break through. So I'm like, holy hell, there's a lot going on here. You know, I do hit him with a Steam Eruption, which doesn't quite kill it, but I get the burn. So there's just all sorts of nonsense happening. And the burn is great, but it actually doesn't put it in a spot where it dies from the damage there. So obviously I don't have anything that really wants to switch into this, and Volcanion is paralyzed and dead. So I realized, you know what, you're staying in here and just gonna take that. So a Terra Blast does finish me off, and another turn of burn damage is not quite enough to knock this thing out. So at this point, I'm realizing I need to get moving quickly to try to pull this game around. And one way you can do that is with the damn Moth, baby. This thing is in a especially good spot because anytime you're in against a special attacker, I know that I can take an attack from this thing. I also know that this is a great opportunity to set up a Quiver Dance. So they go for the Wild Bolt Storm, which ordinarily you'd feel like would hurt. But due to my Ice Scales ability, I take half damage, and that actually doesn't even hurt at all. Now, that allows Frosmoth to then go for a Quiver Dance, and we're looking majestic as hell out here. We also have the snow up, but then the snow stops, so snow day is over, and I'm thinking burn damage kills here. It does not. Burn does not seem to do a damn thing these days. It literally it doesn't do anything, but that's actually fine. I figure, you know what, if I can actually get up another Quiver Dance here, that kind of puts me in a position where this Frosmoth is kind of the checkmate. There's really nothing they can do. So I decide also to guarantee that I don't get paralyzed from that crazy Wild Bolt Storm, I'm gonna go ahead and bust out the Terra Ground. I figure, you know, they're surely going to click it again. Going to allow me another opportunity for a Quiver Dance, which now, Frosmoth is getting a little bit out of hand here. Not even going to lie. This thing is in a position where you do not want to be on the receiving end of this little fella. So they do go for the Storm. Does not affect me. Now I don't have to worry about being paralyzed. And then the burn does its thing. So that's going to take care of Thundurus. And that just goes to show, if you can set up in the face of something where you can grab a couple Quiver Dances, even just one, Frosmoth is insane. And now, guess what? We get to sweep the boy. So as they end up bringing in the Galarian Slowking, I can now bust out the Terra Blast Ground. Obviously, this thing's pretty damn bulky, but with that super effective hit, I can know for sure I can at least grab a 2-hit KO if this thing's like Assault Vest. It does actually end up living, and they pull out the Thunder Wave. Maybe a misclick, but in general, if they go for damage there, it's not going to do anything. I have the special defense boost from those Quiver Dances, and now we get to tear through the team by just clicking Ice Beam and Terra Blast for the remaining mons that they have left. So I'm going to finish off the Slowking here just with an Ice Beam, but they decide to head out. They realize this Moth is way too powerful, and yeah, they were definitely in a position where, yeah, that Moth is just going to run through the rest of them. So they're going to head out, which is not extremely satisfying, but Frosmoth, sometimes you gotta dip on the guy. Now, that is going to bring us into our next game, because we are not done yet, and this Frosmoth is determined to actually kill more stuff. So now's the point where I ask, hey, if you've stuck around this far and are still watching, you should go ahead and hit that like button. It really does help out the channel and with the YouTube algorithm or whatever, and I have to do my YouTube duties and ask. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the match. So this time my opponent's going to go ahead and lead off with the Galvantula, and I'm thinking, great, sticky webs are not really ideal, but luckily Frosmoth doesn't give a damn. I got heavy duty boots on, and it's kind of going to be what I'm going to be working toward. Now, they actually end up going for a Bug Buzz turn 1 against a Clodsire, doesn't do anything. I'm like, that is fine by me. I'm just going to set up my Stealth Rock, don't mind me, I'm just a poop-shaped Clodsire. So I get my rocks up, and I realize now probably they set up Sticky Web. Maybe they thought I would swap turn 1. Makes sense. Now I'm just going to go for an Earthquake to try to get some damage. Want to break a potential Focus Sash on that Galvantula, but they decide to actually end up swapping. They're going to bring in Baxcalibur, who, you know, does take some decent chip from the rocks, and then I get a little bit of damage with an Earthquake. I even pull out my little Clodsire horns, just to show, hey, I am not to be messed with. And it doesn't really do much, but it's a little bit of damage, and I'm kind of worried about this thing setting up here. But instead, they actually just go for an Ice Shard. They probably figure it's a 2-hit KO, but I'm actually a physically defensive variant, so I take it pretty easily, and I'm just going to continue firing off Quakes. Now, it's not quite in range to where this thing's going to maybe die from this next one, but I realize, screw it, I'm going to click it anyway, as they actually high horsepower, which I can barely live, because again, physically defensive Clodsire, kind of the GOAT. We live with 4 HP, which is awesome. But sadly, you know, my next Earthquake is not quite going to do the job. So I also now realize that Clodsire doesn't really have much business staying alive here. So I'm just going to let it die as they finish me with another Ice Shard. So I do get way more value than I would have hoped for. I get some good damage on the Baxcalibur, which is always great. And now the battlefield is my oyster. I've got a couple different options on what I might want to bring in here. I usually default to just going in DD on a Revenge switch in. I want to get up that Psychic Surge. It's going to be really nice because now they can't click Ice Shards on stuff, but also I am in fact faster than a Baxcalibur for some reason. I got, look at those hips. We're thick as hell, but I can outspeed, go for a Dazzling Gleam, and that's going to take care of Baxcalibur. So that's a pretty big threat out of the way. And now as they can go into whatever they want, they don't have a whole lot that can hit Indeedee hard. So I'm thinking, you know what, I can just fire off some expanding forces here, boosted by that terrain, and have a fun time. As they go in Inteleon, Buddy's looking skinny, first of all, but also they do have coverage in our Dark Pulse, and it gets the flinch, which is absolutely put my balls in a vice grip. That is bad, because then they can outspeed, another Dark Pulse kills me, and Indeedee has been hoed once again. So I mean, as that thing goes down, it's not necessarily there to be star of the show. And I also realize, you know, since this thing is dark pulsing, I shouldn't really go into the Reuniclus. So instead, I decided to go into Frosmoth. I know that, you know, since this thing can only hit me on the special side, it seems pretty free to set up some Quiver Dances on. Now, as they do go for the snipe shot, luckily they don't get the crit, which is great. We're able to take it pretty nicely, go for that Quiver Dance, which is now going to allow us to be faster. And Frosmoth has now hung a vacancy sign on that ass, and this foot is in fact looking for a room. I can outspeed, go for a Giga Drain, and that is going to be able to not only take care of the Inteleon extremely satisfyingly, but also brings us back to full HP, which is always nice. So Inteleon goes down, and honestly, just with one Quiver Dance, we're faster than the entire squad they've got. So I'm also feeling like, you know what? With the Stealth Rock support, we don't have to worry about a Focus Sash on Galvantula, and we might have enough damage to blow Buddy out of the water. So I go for the Ice Beam here, just my highest stab damage. Galvantula can, in fact, not deal with it. That's going to take care of the Spider, and that just goes to show we are the superior bug. So here's the thing now, they do have a Sylveon, which can at least take one attack from Frosmoth at this point with just one Quiver Dance. Problem is, I can just easily take an attack from them as well, especially with my special defense boost. So I'm just going to go for the Ice Beam, figure it should be a 2-hit KO, and they actually take this opportunity to set up a light screen. They're thinking, hey, if there's any chance I have to take attacks here, it's going to be with a light screen, and it's not super ideal, but after some leftovers, I'm like, you know what, this is still fine. I can take a Hyper Voice, absolutely no problem. And also, there's no reason for me not to just go for another Quiver Dance here. With my special attack doubled, gonna help us a lot with that light screen, but also now I have doubled special defense. And with our friggin' Ice Scales ability, we are not even worried. Now, they also go for a Reflect, which is wishful thinking. They're like, hey, I can get through this Frosmoth, and then I also have a Reflect for the road, just in case any physical attackers want to bring any shenanigans, but weirdness disappears, and now at this point, I'm like, all right, I've got my Quiver Dances. The free dance show is over. Now I'm just going to go for some damage because I do need to get rid of the Sylveon. It could be a problem. Now it doesn't do quite as much as you'd imagine. Hey, with that light screen up, this thing's also pretty special bulky. But as they go for the Moonblast, that's probably the exact moment they realize that, oh shit, the Frosmoth is actually a problem. It doesn't do anything to me because we're a special beast. And as I fire off another Ice Beam, that one actually takes care of it. So down goes young Skin Ribbons. And even though they have a light screen up, it doesn't matter. Frosmoth, with 2 Quiver Dances, should be in a good spot. With anything except for, you would imagine, Blaziken. So they've seen 2 of my coverage moves. They've seen both Giga Drain and Ice Beam. So they're probably thinking, hey, I can take either of those, and I probably don't even need to worry about it. Especially with the light screen up, Blaziken, this chicken's in a pretty decent spot. Wrong, because I am now Ground Moth. I put the Bulk Cut on my head. We have the power of the damn Earth. And with the Ground Terra Blast, this Blaziken is not going to be having a good time. They will also need 2 speed boosts to be able to outspeed me, so even if they do protect here, the chicken's kind of fried. So they do not protect, and the Terra Blast comes through, takes care of the Blaziken, which is absolutely sweet. And that is the exact reason why you run with the Terra Ground there. Also to not worry about ground coverage, or rock coverage on the opposing side, but that is what the hell we're talking about. Now with their final Mon being the superior, they probably are like, yeah, this thing is... Well, you know, I am ground type, so it's bad, but, I mean, we're faster, and an Ice Beam, it should be able to bop the thing. I do obviously just outspeed, hit him with a nice little stream of ice, and that is going to be a dead superior. So Frosmoth does come through with the satisfying sweep. Sometimes you got to put him in a body bag with the Ice Moth. The thing that's got the most ridiculous typing of all time actually can be pretty good despite that. Honestly, Quiver Dance does a lot of the work for it, but, I mean, anything with Quiver Dance is an absolute beast. You know, this thing just does not get the respect it deserves. So thank you guys very much for watching. For real, I do always appreciate the support on these videos. I'm still having a whole lot of fun with them. And as always, hey, if you have any ideas for future videos and sets that you'd like me to showcase, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'll check them out and maybe they'll be in the next vid. Thank you guys. Peace.